order. It's March 21st, 2024, and this is the AMATS Policy Committee. It's now 1 o'clock. Run through the roll call. Mr. Cross, I understand you're on the phone.
Yep, I'm present. Thank you.
Always here. Last but not least, Member Boland, happy to be here. So we have a quorum. We're all here, all 5 of us. And Aaron, would you help us out with the public involvement announcement, please?
Of course, AMATS committee meetings are open to the public, and the public is provided an opportunity to comment at each meeting. Business items are first presented by student consultant. After the committee discusses the business item, the public is invited to formally comment. Each participant will have 3 minutes to speak on their topic. A couple of housekeeping items. If you're joining us virtually and you're not a member of the committee, please turn your camera off when you're not speaking on an item. If you're joining us by phone, to mute and unmute the microphone, press *6. Thank you.
All right. So we have the agenda in front of us. Wait, how about movement to approve? To approve.
Second.
By Mr. Colhays, seconded by Ms. O'Connor. Do we have any changes? Hearing none, are there any objections to adopting the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. For agenda item number 4, we have before us the minutes from the February 15th, 2024 meeting for approval. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Falcon, seconded by Dr. Bowling. Brings us to action item 5A, which is the AMATS safety plan.
Excuse me, Chair, you need to vote on the minutes, whether they're approved.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I skipped the most important part there.
It's okay.
Any objections to approving the minutes? Hearing none. We'll approve those minutes. Now we're on to action item 5A.
Thank you. Okay, before you is 5A, the AMATS safety plan. So we've brought the safety plan to you in various stages. So this is the kind of final, hopefully approved stage today. So we started this safety plan in March of 2023. During the development, we did have 3 stakeholder meetings, a half-day public open house, presentations to the AMATS committees, and public survey with people responding. One of the key features of this safety plan is it was developed using the safe streets or safe systems approach, the SSA. This is kind of a new thing that FHWA and other communities have been using for a little bit of time, and so we're using it it was used for this plan. And the big thing about this is it's really focused on safe vehicles, safe road users, safe post-crash care, safe roads, safe speeds. And it has things in there like responsibility shared through everyone who uses the system. So kind of a more holistic approach to safety. One of the really good things about using the SSA approach is that it makes AMATS and any of our partner agencies or any agency who wants to use our safety plan eligible for the Safe Streets for All grant, SS4A, another acronym. And so we're very excited for that. I did get notice recently that AMATS is ahead of the curve on this. There are not a ton of MPOs that have a safety action plan in place. So we will be not the first, but some of the first MPOs to do it. So I'm very excited. And we've already got notice that a number of people in the municipality of Anchorage are waiting for this to be approved so they can put in for a Safe Streets for All grant. So we're very excited for that. And so work session was held with the TAC and PC on February 21st to give an overview of the plan to the committee members and to help be able to answer any questions. The Technical Advisory Committee reviewed this document at their meeting in March. They did have a few recommended changes, and it's on page 18. Can you scroll down to page 18, please? So in here, we're talking about different programs that are in the safety plan. And there were a couple of changes here. One, the bullet that says the Municipality Traffic Safety Committee meets regularly, recommended to update that to say the Safe Student Transportation Committee. Just some clarification language there. And then the bullet says a traffic calming program is in place. So it's about the middle of the safety programs in there. To add neighborhood traffic calming program is into place for just some more clarification. And then the recommendation was to add a bullet for the highway safety improvement program to that section. It's already on the page before it, page 17, where it talks about plans that are reviewed. But it's important for us to mention that HSIP is an ongoing safety program and should be included in that page. So those were the recommendations from the Technical Advisory Committee to approve it with those edits. So it's before you today to review those recommendations from the TAC and then take action on it. So I'm here to help answer any questions that you have on the plan. I guess I should actually go through the plan real quick so you can see it. Sorry. I'm rushing too quickly. So can you go to the beginning of the plan and we'll just kind of scroll through. It's a relatively short plan. So if you want to just go ahead and scroll down to the executive summary or the table of contents, just a few pages down. There we go. Yeah, I kind of talk about the summary here. So the big thing about the plan is it's broken up into the different chapters that we have here. We have visions, goals, and then guiding strategies is our chapter 1. And then we have kind of the story that we're telling of what is our safety story for AMATS, you know, kind of what does the data say are some of our needs or critical areas. And then we have chapter 4 that's talking about addressing and preventing key collision factors. Can you go ahead and scroll down to chapter 4 that begins on page 32? Thank you. So this one, go ahead and scroll down a little there. So the key thing about this one is it identifies these profiles where we took a look at kind of different type of crashes that are happening in our community. Yeah, go ahead and scroll down a little to that one right there. Up, right there, thanks. This talks about the different profiles that are looking in here. So we have angle involved in intersections, bicycles and pedestrians involved on arterial, the high-speed streets, pedestrian involved where there is no sidewalk, pedestrians involved, no bicycle lanes, and then pedestrians involved, no control types. So these profiles were used, go ahead and scroll down 2 pages, please. Right there. So these profiles were used to provide information about what percentage of crashes are made up from these. Can you? All right. It looks like, is there something in the way at the top of the screen on that?
Yeah, it says recording.
Yeah, can you go to the thing and close that, please? Thank you.
Excuse me, what page are you on?
Page 36. Crash. Oh, another one has popped up. Thank you. What type of collision or crash that happens at this, what percentage it makes up, and then potential engineering countermeasures. We have low cost, medium cost, and high cost. So it's not saying that we have to do all of these. These are just some options that can be looked at to help address this particular type of crash. And so there are 5 profiles, and so they all have that kind of information, as well as having information about their locations, the kind of the typical, most commonly seen locations. And then if you could scroll to page, real quick, page 46. So this is chapter 5, where we're talking about priority locations. So this is where a number of locations were developed. You can scroll down 2 pages to, or 3 pages to 49. So this map right here kind of shows the crashes, intersection and segment crashes for our community. So this is both Anchorage and Chugiak Eagle River. And it shows the areas kind of like highest crash numbers. And this is what really drove a lot of the profile information that we talked about before, and that's in this chapter here. This chapter took a look at the crash information that was gathered, the data, and then developed a number of additional considerations, equity, which you can scroll down one more. There you go. So we talked about equity and then priority modal networks for the non-motorized plan. Scroll down one more. You can see the maps that were developed for equity. And if you scroll down a little more, you can see the maps that were developed as part of the non-motorized network. So we basically compiled all this information in here to come up with priority locations that should be focused on as part of this plan. Go ahead and scroll down to 55. Here we go. So these locations were prioritized into two tiers, tier 1 corridors and tier 2 corridors. Tier 1 corridors were ones that were kind of the highest crash numbers, but already have projects programmed or planned for them. So as you can see here, Minnesota is one example. We already have a Minnesota corridor plan that is underway. That'll be taking a look at what to do in Minnesota corridor and can account for the crash information that is developed as part of this plan and make recommendations on how to address it. Same with Tudor, A and C Street, 5th and 6th also have. So tier 2 corridors were selected or developed. Those are high crash areas that don't have projects already planned or programmed in them. So you can see a number of the corridors are Northeast Anchorage and then a couple in South Anchorage. And so if you can scroll down to page 57, please. There were a total of 9 corridors that were selected or identified through the priority assessment that were provided for the public review and discussion during the stakeholder and public meetings. Out of that, there were 5 locations that were prioritized for further review and investment to include as a corridor profile. Go ahead and scroll to the next page and we'll just go through these one at a time. So the first one is Burgaw Street, corridor A. Yeah, go ahead right there, thanks. Northern Lights Boulevard to the Glen Highway. So as you can see from this map right here, there is a list of the types of countermeasures that can be used, the notable collision patterns that are observed, and kind of the collision history. So what this is really going to be helpful for is as projects are developed, and safety is one of the considerations for projects, it helps guide some possible countermeasures to help address some of the concerns in the area. Next, corridor B is DeBar Road from Lake Otis to Boniface. Next is Mountain View Drive from Taylor Street to Pine Street. The next is Muldoon Road from Northern Lights Boulevard to Dubin Avenue. And then the last one is Northern Lights Boulevard, Lake Otis Boulevard to Muldoon Road. So this plan, after, hopefully if it gets approved, will start to be integrated into the AMATS process. It's anticipated that as we develop future criteria for our MTP and TIP, that will start referencing the AMATS safety plan to show that if projects are aligned with our safety plan or helping to address these priority locations that have been selected. There's a lot more that can go into if you need, but I think I'll stop there and see if you guys have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. We did have a joint committee working group on this.
Yes, we did.
Technical Advisory Committee of the Policy Board. Or committee, I don't know that everybody showed up, but it's helpful. Does anybody have any questions or comments from the committee for Aaron?
Are we doing comments now, or are we doing questions, comments? Or
It's questions, comments from the committee, then it opens to the public and then comes back for action.
I have a comment then. Page 42 of the plan, where it talks about potential engineering countermeasures when there are no bike lanes. One of the low-cost potential engineering countermeasures is prohibiting right turns on red. I guess my comment is, I think this is a great plan. It's really beautifully put together. And it's great to have these plans and say, these are the interventions that we're looking at. But my experience is that the traffic department for the municipality and PM&E often are unsupportive of these interventions. For instance, right now, I have an ordinance that proposes to prohibit right turn on red downtown, where there are no protected bike lanes. Yes, we're doing a pilot. There's no protected bike lanes currently. It's also illegal to bike on the sidewalk. And so you know, I think for me, it's frustrating to say, okay, we're gonna do another plan. We're gonna wait for another study. We're gonna do the downtown engineering street study. Hold off on doing any of these things that could actually prevent collisions with pedestrians or bicyclists. When we did the Safe Routes to School working group, we talked about raised crosswalks. And that's an intervention here, interestingly, put under some of the medium cost countermeasures. Well, we heard from P&E all about how expensive, cost prohibitive raised crosswalks would be. We actually ended up disbanding the Safe Routes to School working group because the policymakers, the assembly members, were frustrated with it. Just seemed like every meeting we were hearing why everything is already safe enough as is. And we asked time and time again, help us, you know, how can we support? What can we fund? You know, how can we support traffic and P&E in making some of these intersections safer? And it was just like we were being talked out of it every time. So I guess, you know, happy to support the plan. I think it's good. It'll just be interesting to see what happens when some of these interventions, whether through policy or funding, you know, policymakers actually try to support whether or not the departments actually support that as well. That's my comment. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I've got a couple, maybe just conversation, I guess, to continue that on. I mean, I think that those decisions need to be data driven, and you know, there are some streets in downtown now that restrict right-hand turns on red. But I believe the city traffic engineer has the ability to post those. So I guess in my mind, I would respect that professionalism, I guess, and have that decision come from that group if I'm correct in that. I hate to be legislating traffic laws, but anyway, besides that, there's we talked about it at our working group, I think, but there's a few errors in the data. Just the ones that came up were, say, for instance, so on page 41, it speaks to those crashes that are indicated have no, or in areas of no sidewalks. And then on the next page, or on 41, I think it has 3 roads as examples, and all 3 of those roads have continuous sidewalks from start to finish. Similarly, on page 45, it speaks to uncontrolled accidents that occur at uncontrolled intersections, but then some of the data shows crashes on intersections that are clearly controlled. So, you know, I know it's important to get the plan approved so that we can move forward for funding. And I don't know that any of those errors are significant. But my thought was maybe we could, and I know that the data comes from a different source. It comes from APD, and they fill out a form. Maybe that form needs to be improved, but I don't think we're here to do that. My thought was maybe just a sentence in there somewhere that states that some of this data might not be 100% correct. I believe there was probably a crash at the location or near the location that's shown on the plan, but the exact circumstance might not be 100% correct. So that's the edit that I would offer. I'm not sure of process and how I should offer.
That would be after we get a motion and then an amendment can be made to edit that. But I'll speak on that really quickly to provide more information for the committee members. And we do have consultants here who helped us with this, who could probably speak a little better on this, but it is difficult for us for this plan. So one of the things that's a challenge is the data that we gathered was from the municipality of Anchorage. And the municipality of Anchorage assigns crashes or incidents that happen to the nearest intersection. So when the report's filled out, it could have happened not at that intersection. And there could have been because there was no sidewalk there or because there was no control type at that exact location that it happened. But when it's entered into the system, it's assigned to the nearest intersection. So I think the reason, I think these are good comments, and that plus the data that's gathered from APD, I think it does speak to further discussions need to happen about how the data is collected, how it's managed and maintained and entered into the systems. You know, I'm a little leery about adding something in there that says it's not 100% correct. because that kind of speaks to concerns about the document itself. So maybe a counter recommendation would be maybe we can change the titles of the profiles to be a little more open-ended. Or get some information in the profile paragraph sections that kind of that speak to that this data is entered into the system and it's assigned to an intersection. You know, you need to look at the actual data if you're gonna go out and do something about it to see where exact location it happened and what the circumstance surrounding it. We can work on that. I don't know if anybody from the consultant team can speak to this as well, if you guys are interested in hearing more.
I think that covers it for me. It explains why there's, you may be correct. And I don't know how significant that is. But, yeah, I just think a sentence like that to explain that would have value.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions from the committee? Hearing none, are there any comments or from the public? Seeing none.
Sir,
Hold on just a second.
Oh, sorry. Please state your name and you have 3 minutes, so.
thank you. My name's Aves Thompson. I'm here as a private citizen. My only question would be, has there been any input from the Freight Advisory Committee on this study, on this project?
Good question. Do we know the answer to that?
Yes, but can the consultant speak to maybe when, or John, can you speak to maybe when we directly went to the Freight Advisory Committee to get their input?
Let's see, that would have been John Cecil, Freight Advisory Commission, Committee, Mobility Coordinator. The first quarter meeting, I believe, or it may have been the fourth quarter of last year, that we had presentation to the committee members and seeking their input. And I believe they also, the consultant team met with the ATA and talked to them directly as well. But I would defer to the consultants to verify that.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Thompson, or?
Kind of, yes.
Kind of.
Thank you.
Anybody else? So what is the will of the committee?
Move to approve the Anchorage Metropolitan Area Transportation Solution Safety Plan.
Second. Process, how can we modify that to amend it with that sentence that we spoke of?
So it could be done now that there's and correct me if I'm wrong, but now that there's for a second, now somebody can make an amendment as needed. And you would just need a mover of that amendment and then a second, and then you would explain what the amendment is, vote on the amendment, and then if there are any other amendments to those, once all the amendments are done, you then go back and vote on the motion as amended.
Okay. And I can make that motion.
Technically, if you pass the gavel to the vice chair
All right.
and he finishes the whole thing, not just this amendment, but everything, including the final vote on the safety plan itself. So you basically are passing the gavel for action 5A.
Can I move to add the sentence? But he doesn't have to pass the gavel. I move to add the sentence, please.
I guess, just for clarification for anybody looking for a second, what would you like the sentence to say exactly? That crashes are assigned to intersections and additional review is needed?
That captures it. Do we have a second to that motion? I'll second. Seconded by Mr. Colhays, moved by Ms. McCon, seconded by Mr. Colhays. Are there any objections to the motion as amended?
Just to the amendment.
or to the amendment to the motion? Hearing none, the amendment is approved. Are there any? Hearing none, the motion is approved. So we've approved the AMATS safety plan. On to that. But then, as amended,
Yes, thank you.
I promise that eventually I'll get this.
It's okay.
There you go. Action item 5B is Seward to Glen Highway PEL comments. You have a presentation here.
It's just gonna be me kind of talking through the comments. I'll be as brief and concise as I can. So AMATS staff attended the public open house for the Seward to Glen PEL on February 7th to review the alternatives being presented at the meeting. After attending the meeting, staff met to discuss the alternatives and any comments that we would like to provide. The comments that you see before you were reviewed by the TAC on March 7th, 2024, or there's a robust discussion, and then they recommended approval with one addition. So I'm going to go through the comments really quickly to give you a brief overview of them. Comment number 1, overall feedback is that the draft alternatives do not appear to address the concerns raised by the community nor solve many of the problems that have been raised as part of the plan development. And in fact, they appear to make local connectivity worse because they are focused solely on highway improvements. Second comment, alternatives don't match up to the purpose and need. They show a focus on regional connectivity where purpose and need says regional connectivity, regional and local connectivity are paramount. And when you look at the actual model or the actual documents, sorry, not the modeling, the documents put out, such as the system performance report, it says a good part of the shift into LOSF for the PM peak is on the Glen Highway in the northeastern corner of the Anchorage Bowl and along the Glen Highway and Fifth Avenue. The LOS is not expected to rise to an unacceptable LOS within most of the study area. As LOS is a measure of congestion, one measure of congestion, it's basically saying that the congestion concerns are on the Glen Highway. System performance report also shows that the vehicle hours of delay is almost non-existent in changes aside from the Glen Highway. And it's also very low on the changes for the Glen Highway. So there appears to be little to no justification for the construction of a highway at the expense of the community. Comment number 3, highways is not part of the current best practice of transportation planning. Instead, what most of the country is looking at are lower cost solutions to manage and maintain the system, such as TISMO or travel demand management. Talk about that later. Fourth comment, no funding has been indicated for the alternative. I do know that everybody says that we are not far enough along in the project to get a base planning level estimate, but staff is still very concerned, especially since we just approved the 2050 MTP, where we showed pretty limited funding for a lot of big, large-scale projects in the next 30 years or so. And, you know, if these projects that are shown as alternatives, one of them wants to be funded, you know, the MTP has to be amended and we still have to keep fiscal constraints. So what's going to be taken out to pay for it? Number 5, the proposed alternatives would add a significant amount of infrastructure that will require long-term pavement rehab and winter maintenance. As you know, it's been very difficult for all agencies to keep up with the demand for winter maintenance. And there is a significant backlog of pavement needs in the community. So this will add to it, especially as you look through the different alternatives with all of the on and off ramps. There's some concern there. Comment 6, alternatives don't match up with the MTP goals to maintain the existing infrastructure, improve security and safety, improve access and mobility options, promote a healthy environment, and advance equity. And what we mean by this is that it doesn't match up for all users of the system, including those who are not in vehicles. The alternatives do not match up with the federal aid highway performance goals of infrastructure condition and environmental sustainability. Comment 7, public transit doesn't appear to have been included in the analysis as part of the alternatives. There's no indication that public transportation was included as a way to help solve some of the concerns in the area. So staff is asking, how was transit included in the development? And how is future transit accounted for? Comment 8, as an MPO, AMATS is required to consider housing in our planning process. And it would be better to understand how housing impacts will be mitigated across all alternatives, especially given the housing crisis we're currently facing as a community. Comment 9, there were no innovative solutions that appear to have been considered as part of the alternatives, such as TSMO, TDM, speaking such as transit. And so it's kind of concern and asking, were those considered and how were they considered? So those were the 9 that staff originally recommended through the TAC. The TAC added a 10th that it says, please provide clarification on what is part of the no build alternative versus the build alternative. At the TAC, there was discussion on there's 2 no build alternatives, but it was rather confusing for everybody because they were build alternatives. There are 2 of them. The first one is if no project is done on Ingra Gamble, but some of the 2050 MTP projects are done, what would the system look like? The second no build alternative is if those same MTP projects were done and the Ingra Gamble Complete Streets projects were done, Galen, correct me if I'm wrong, what would the system look like? So when they say no build, they really mean no highway being built. What would this system look like? So there was some confusion from the TAC. So they were asking for clarification from the project team on, what is there an actual no build where nothing is done for any projects in the area? And I hope so, because that would match up with what they show in their system performance report. So these are before you today for review and for your action on them. I'm happy to help answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Any questions or comments from the committee?
Thank you. I would just say, as one of the assembly members representing Fairview, I strongly support this letter, and I thank staff for writing it. I think it captures a lot of my concerns, the concerns that I'm hearing from the community. I guess one thing that I would like to see more clearly presented by the project team is satellite overlay, because I think the community doesn't fully understand some of the impacts. I really appreciate the comment about housing and the housing crisis that we have. Some of these alternatives that have been put forward would cause the removal of a lot of housing for right of way, and I'm thinking really of that alternative. I think it's C that kind of cuts through South Fairview there, and so having the public, creating a clear presentation of what those trade-offs are, I think is really paramount. I guess my question would be sort of along the lines of what Aaron was saying at the end of his comments there about the interim alternative versus no build alternatives, because of everything that I've seen, I am most inclined to support an interim alternative that incorporates our local planning documents, the 2050 MTP, a complete streets model on Gamble and Ingra, including lane reduction, the other MTP things like underground in the utilities, et cetera. And then I think it would be, it's really important for the community to see something creative on either. So when I think of a no build alternative, I hope it doesn't preclude the opportunity to create a greenway or a lunar or something that connects active transportation for that corridor. So I guess that would be, helpful to have a little bit more explanation on what no build alternatives could look like versus that interim alternative, because I really want to see serious presentation of that interim alternative.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
I have a comment, Mr. Sheriff. I mean, I want to weigh in. I agree with many of Member Wola's comments, particularly the housing issue. And I like the idea of a graphical overlay through GIS that shows the true impacts. As I think everybody knows, housing has been a focus of both the administration and the assembly, and some of those alternatives would have significant impacts. One thing that's not addressed in the letter, but that I personally am aware of are the potential impacts to Merrill Field with some of the alternatives. And there's, I know there are pros and cons in the community regarding Merrill Field, but it's an economic engine in that area right now. All that to say that I appreciate the work that the staff did as well on this. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any comments?
There's one more question, please. So, you know, we got the Reconnecting Communities grant, novel grant, first of its kind, to help support the community. The Assembly funded the local match for the Reconnecting Fairview project. You know, I'm curious about the impacts on local institutions, and I maybe would use this opportunity, if it's okay, to ask the manager. Recently, as part of Alaska Design Week, I had the opportunity to do a walking tour with parishioners at Greater Friendship Baptist Church, which is historic. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. It's the first Black church in Alaska. And we did a walking tour of that corridor. My question is, are there alternatives that impact Greater Friendship Baptist Church and would potentially cause it to be relocated for needed right of way?
Aaron, I can ask you what's our process going to be on this? We're looking at one set of comments. It's out for public review. We're going to hopefully get a lot of participation, get a lot of comments. I don't know that I feel like putting the project staff on the spot today. I feel like maybe once those other comments come in, that we could have them present maybe to a working group, like a joint committee, and talk about these other concerns that aren't on your list. In my mind, the correct action for this is to pass these comments on to the project team and then have it run through the technical advisory committee. I think there's definitely a policy decision here, but I don't know. I'm feeling like this probably isn't the place to either debate these comments before they've gone through the project and through the technical advisory committee. But again, certainly want to learn more about the project and learn about what comes out of those committees so that we can make a policy decision. Does that make sense? I feel like I
don't know if that makes sense, because I guess I need to understand then so we're forwarding this letter. I like what's in the letter.
Mhm.
This is coming on behalf of staff as approved by the policy committee. Is that correct, Aaron?
So technically speaking, you guys can do kind of whatever you want with these comments. You know, staff wanted to bring them through to make sure you're involved in the process and you know what is being proposed by staff. So you could say, no, we don't want to send the comments in, or yes, we want to send the comments in as staff. It's fine. Or we want to send the comments in as the policy committee is sending these comments. It's kind of up to how you guys want to do them. We're just presenting them through you to see what you want done with them.
So I guess where I'm headed here is, you know, potentially there's an opportunity to amend this letter, particularly that's going to be sent on behalf of the policy committee, to say something to the effect of, you know, we would support alternatives that cause minimal impacts on community institutions.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And I guess I'm at the point where I don't think I'm not ready to endorse any of these comments. I'm not even ready to endorse that. I mean, in principle, I guess I am, but yeah, I don't think I'm at a point where I'm comfortable endorsing any of these comments. They might all be valid comments, but again, I want the project staff to go through them and then the technical advisory committee to look at those responses and give us an idea of what the best path forward is from a technical perspective.
Has the technical advisory committee seen this letter?
They've seen them, but I think what Sean's saying is it needs to go to the project team for them to respond to these comments. And then those responses will come back to the technical advisory committee, who would then make a recommendation from the policy committee based on those responses from the project team.
You captured my concern. I guess that as far as I know, the technical advisory committee hasn't seen the responses. I haven't seen the responses.
I don't think, no, they haven't, unless I'm not aware of anything, but the project team has not responded to this because we haven't officially sent it out to them yet.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think the action is for us to, I mean, I'm fine with, and certainly they should be forwarded onto the project team, because I'm sure there's value here. But I don't think the policy committee is ready to approve the comments or endorse the comments until we get that feedback from,
Oh, I'm ready to send these comments. In fact, I will make the motion to send these comments.
this. Okay,
To the budget.
Second.
Yeah, yeah,
First, okay.
and I think Kevin Cross had his hand raised.
Mr. Cross.
Thank you. If Mr. Boland has made a movement to forward those comments, I will second it. And if I may have a moment to speak to my reasoning.
We have to take public comment.
Yeah, we're
first.
jumping the gun on the motion, but if you have questions or comments,
Well, I just,
Please.
I don't have more of comments, and that is that strongly on 7 and 8. One of the things I don't know of being considered, and I want to make sure it goes into it, is that, Powder West just got approved. That's over 1,000 homes on the southern edge or, mid Eagle River. But I really think that's important to recognize, we don't currently have any public transportation. I think there's one bus route into Eagle River. And if you're talking about adding that many more homes, most of that traffic, I imagine, will have to go through downtown because most of the job base is midtown. And I just want to know that in light of that more recent development and that project being approved and Eklutna Inc. working on developing what is a massive, probably one of the largest residential developments in 30 years in Anchorage's history, if that's being taken consideration, the amount of traffic volume that's now going to be funneled through our downtown / Fairview area and how we're looking to mitigate that, particularly in light of having to take housing concerns into effect. They're moving forward pretty aggressively with that project. I just want to make sure that that's being taken into consideration in the planning. Thank you.
Question for Mr. Young and Ellen. So if the policy committee doesn't make these comments, AMATS staff would still forward them as the,
We would probably not forward them if the policy committee didn't approve them.
so I hope maybe I'm overthinking this, that, I certainly think they should be forwarded on to the project team. I don't know that I want to review and approve the comments and say that they should be incorporated into the project. So I could be overthinking that. So I think when we get to your motion, as stated, I would vote for it.
Yeah, the intent was just to bring it forward to be like, is the policy committee okay for these comments to be sent to the project team?
Sure. Okay.
Because it's a significant project and we want to make sure you're aware of what is being said. And if you guys say, nope, don't send them, then we won't send them to the project team.
So I'm probably overthinking.
yeah. Well, I don't know that you're if I may, Mr. Chair, I don't know that you're overthinking it. I support many of the comments. I think that the team needs to see them. And then I try to balance our role as the policy committee in approving the comments to go forward, as opposed to approving the comments and supporting them as this body. I think there's a distinction there, which I think is what you're trying to get at. I do, no matter what happens, I do want to make sure that there's an avenue for these comments officially to go to the project team, because I think that's important. Thank you.
Any other comments from the committee?
Would it make sense to have the motion recognize that expressly that the comments are approved to go forward to the project team for consideration, for example, rather than suggesting that there's a specific reason in clarity?
So I think we will go to public comment and come back to the motion, but for me, I would support either or both. And I think maybe we vote until they have a motion to say that we're okay with AMATS staff sending in their comments to the team. And then maybe we take a secondary vote, saying the policy committee endorses these comments. Because I do endorse them. And I think it'd be interesting to see where various entities line up or don't on that.
We will get another shot at this, right? And I think it is good. I think it's definitely a topic for at least one working group.
So is another shot, walk me through that. Is the AMATS policy committee then going to send another letter?
No, I mean, another shot at reviewing the projects and the comments that we get. I think we're looking at 9, 10, I guess, as amended comments, and again, I hope we get a lot more than that. Just to round up the discussion. Any other comments from the committee? All right, hearing none. Are there any comments from the public? Yeah, I'm not seeing any. Do I hear a motion?
So move to approve AMATS staff sending these comments to give us a letter as their comments on the Seward one now.
Second.
Sorry, just as a quick reminder, we get one motion on an action item. So I know there was talk about doing two motions to see where people fall. There's one motion, so just want to point that out.
The motion is to forward on to the project team. Are there any objections to approving the motion?
I need a second.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
Okay, Kevin, thank you. Sorry, I missed it.
Any objections to approving the motion?
So would this be the time to amend then?
Yes, if you want to do an amendment, so adding in like the TAC's recommendation or doing something else, this would be a good time, yes.
What was the TAC recommendation again? I'm sorry.
To add in the number 10, which was to clarify what is the no build versus build alternatives.
Yeah, so I will happily move that as an amendment.
If I may, Mr. Chair,
Please.
just to confirm, Mr. Young and Ellen, we have one motion to amend. So would Mr. Wallen need to amend both to include the TAC comment and that these are submitted without endorsement, or what's the?
So I think I'm holding back another amendment. But I think the
Yeah.
first amendment that I'll make to the motion, which is to AMATS staff sign this letter, is to add number 10 as recommended by the Technical Advisory Committee on clarifying the no bill alternatives.
So the current amended motion is to essentially forward the comments as amended by the Technical Advisory Committee to the project staff. Do I hear a second on that? Oh, sorry. Mr. Foley's seconded the amendment. Are there any objections to approving the amendment to the motion? Hearing none, that amendment is approved. And we're going to bring forward?
Yeah, so I'll make one more amendment.
Please,
And
okay.
vote on it. And I think I know how it's gonna go, but I'm gonna make it anyway. Just because I think this is a great letter. I would add a final paragraph to the letter saying these comments are endorsed by the AMATS Policy Committee.
Second.
The motion is to amend to include endorsement from the policy committee. And I think we'll probably vote on that. So I'll take a roll. Dr. Boland, how do you vote? I vote yes. Ms. Bocon?
Yeah.
No. Mr. Colhase?
My editorial comment is I'm conflicted about the role of the policy committee on this one. Because as I said, I do support many of the comments, but I think in the interest of the process, I would be a no vote on this.
Mr. Cross?
Yes, thank you.
So the current motion is to forward the comments as amended by the Technical Advisory Committee to the project team. That's been seconded. Do I hear any additional
I've
amendment?
got one more amendment, and I promise I'm done.
Okay, all right.
So I want to add a final sentence to comment number 1. That impacts to community institutions should also be analyzed and presented.
Capture that sentence.
That impacts the community and institutions should also be analyzed and presented.
Do I hear a second to that motion?
I'll second for the purposes of discussion. Dan, if you would mind give you more information as the reason for this. Thank you.
Sure, so thinking of Greater Friendship Baptist Church, historic places in Fairview, I think, really representing honestly to the community, what those trade-offs look like when it comes to right of way, which historic community institutions would have to be relocated, with some of these alternatives. And I think that presenting that, in an honest dialogue, what those impacts are, really important to the community.
And I think that's part of the process anyway, so I won't object to that amendment. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair or Mr. Young, is there an opportunity to add a friendly amendment to the amendment? Is that?
We allow friendly amendments. Yes.
I would offer a friendly amendment that would say, that would add public and private institutions, because I think there is a need to analyze things like Merrill and impacts to Merrill.
And then so is the mover is okay with it? Is the second okay with the friendly amendment?
Yes.
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 Okay, can you read that back to us, please?
Yes, so as friendly amended, it would read, the impacts to community, public and private institutions should be analyzed and presented. Or should it just say, the impacts to public and private institutions should be analyzed and presented?
I would suggest public and private community. Kind of reversing the wording, public and
Okay,
private, or
public
private,
and-
public doesn't matter. Public and private community institutions, I think was the term used.
The impacts to public and private community institutions should also be analyzed and presented.
Motion has been made, it's been seconded to amend. Are there any objections to approving the motion to amend? Hearing none, the motion to amend passes. So we're back to the overall motion, which is to report the AMATS staff comments onto the project team as amended by the technical advisory committee in adding the sentence that you just read back to us.
Correct.
That motion has been seconded. Do I hear any objections to passing the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Why does that seem so much harder than?
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
Okay, I think that's the last of our action items.
Yes, sir.
On to item number 6, project and plan updates. 2024 Cycling Urbanism Masterclass presentation.
Now for the awesomely fun part. Chelsea, would you like to give a quick intro?
Sure. Chelsea Wardwaller, AMATS staff. I'm staffing the AMATS Complete Streets Plan, which we were able to fund training through that item to send to municipal staff, Zach Hartman from the traffic department, Brandon Telford from PME, and then to DOT staff, Reed, Noah the other day, Noah King, all went to Oulu and Finland. Oulu and Helsinki, Finland, to take the cycling urbanism masterclass that I got to take last year. So that's here to give a little bit of background.
Thanks, Chelsea. I'm Zach Hartman with the Traffic Engineering Department, as Chelsea said. I'm sharing some of the pretty pictures and takeaways from the things we learned in Helsinki and Oulu. So I have about 10 minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me. So we started in Helsinki. We had 2 days in Helsinki, so we had the opportunity to meet with their city staff and some of their local consultants, as well as get a tour of some of their bicycling facilities. Just to do a quick comparison, so we have, we understand the differences between Helsinki and Anchorage. They are a lot older, and generally speaking, these are scale images. I would say they're about 3 times as population dense, both in their urban core and kind of in their greater metro area, if you're including Wasilla and Palmer in that equation. Weather is the big one. You might have noticed in the first slide, there wasn't a ton of snow in the ground. They're a little bit warmer, a little bit less snow, so they get an advantage where it'll get above freezing and some of that snow load will melt off, making it a little bit easier on them. So these 5 points on the left are from their city bike engineer. These are kind of the 5 main things that drive their path forward on their bike system. Number 1, direct and efficient routes, clearly getting pedestrians and bicyclists through intersections as well. Number 2 is that those things have to be maintained. Number 1, doesn't matter as much if those facilities aren't usable all year round. Number 3 is that there should be good construction accommodations. So when new things are being built, that they're easy to use, there's easy detours, and people are safely and comfortably able to get around. And I saw that when I was there, middle of winter, things were still being built and the detours were straightforward. Number 4 is bike parking. It stuck out to me that the city is taking the lead on bike parking, but you know, it makes sense in a dense downtown core. If you have nowhere to park your car or park your bike, you might not switch that mode. And number 5, marketing and communications. It's the goal of the city to kind of get that bike mode share. So they want to bring that message to their constituents. And the image on the right is a representation of the transportation hierarchy they adopted in their 2016 city plan, basically their comprehensive plan. The top of the food chain for transportation is the pedestrian, followed by bicyclists. 3rd is public transportation. And then the movement of goods is 4th. And then last is folks in private vehicles. This slide here is taken from their most recent bike plan. The reason I'm showing it here in the middle, it's talking about the financial situation, the prioritization they had for bike network. You know, not so long ago in 2010, the big city of Helsinki only gave 4 million euros for bikes and pedestrians combined. So that was the pot of money. The top row shows some of their political decisions and plans that went into place, their bicycle highway network plan, their bicycle action plan, and so on. And that momentum kept building. In 2012, they split off bicycling specific funding, and that funding grew and grew to support the commitments they made in those plans. There in 2020, they showed 19.5 million euros for bicycling spending. That's gone up even higher in more recent years because their climate action plan that was recently adopted takes their 20% bike mode share goal and moves it up from 2035 to 2030. So that red line is the trajectory that they expect to grow in their bike mode share. So quite a lofty goal. So speaking of bike mode share, this is a snippet from their Finnish travel survey. They do it every 6 years. They've been doing it since 1970. So it's really cool to be able to see geographically across Finland and through time how travel patterns have changed. Helsinki's highlighted here, that yellow arrow. You know, the big dense city, they really shine when it comes to walking, which is the dark orange. They're right at the top when it comes to walk mode share. And then the light blue or cyan indicates their transit use. 18% is double like the nearest city in Finland. 18% of all trips by public transport, pretty spectacular. And this slide I really liked because it shows how that mode share changes with your trip length. I was surprised to learn that their median bike trip length in Helsinki was 2.5 kilometers. So a little over a mile, just a few minutes on a bike is the median trip length. So you can see here in this graph, you know, people kind of stop walking once it's more than 2 kilometers. They kind of tend to stop biking once it's more than 5 kilometers, then the public transport kicks in. And if it's more than 10 kilometers or 7 miles, they still end up in a car. So this kind of shows you that walking, biking, public transport kind of has to fit into the right situation. And when it does make sense, maintenance and infrastructure can support a mode shift. Oh, this was a kind of a fun fact. We learned that Finland is home to the most expensive traffic ticket ever, 121,000 euros, which was cut in half by the courts. It was greater than that. They give their traffic tickets out as a percentage of the person's income. So a very wealthy businessman was driving 20 over the speed limit and a speed traffic camera caught him. And yeah, there's a quote at the very bottom. He says, "I really regret the matter." So looks like he kind of owned up to it, even though there's a very hefty fine. Finland has over 1,000 of those traffic cameras. I believe they're all on like the national highway system. So 33 of them are on the kind of highway network through Helsinki. And this is the bike network they're building out to get to their ambitious 20% mode share by 2030. On the bottom left there is a BANA, or a bicycle superhighway. Basically what they're trying to do is take their 8-foot multi-use pathways that get a lot of use and expand them out to a bicycle superhighway. And you can see on the right, everything in yellow is their goal to build in the next 3 to 4 years to stay on track with their mode share goals. So as an example of that, this is, I believe this was a national highway, 4 lanes. And on the left, you can see it's just, you know, a dirt path. People are walking there or biking there. So recently, there's no summer photos because they just finished it in the fall. This is what they built out. It's a bicycle superhighway, so cars separated from pedestrians, separated from cyclists. They have some lighting on the backside for this bicycle superhighway, and they also added the kind of connection to this business park up on the left as well. So, you know, just building out that network where it makes the most sense. There's a couple photos. We had very, very light snow in Helsinki, but you'll recognize a grader in the top left, looks very similar. Bottom left is a video I don't think I'll be able to play, but you know, the phone booth looking equipment, that one had a brush on it. There's just a light dusting, so they fit it with a brush attachment. And on the right is that maintenance contractor doing some hand shoveling of their stairs. Skip here. So I mentioned bike parking and city's role in bike parking. It was everywhere. It lined all the streets kind of in the furniture zone where we would expect to see parking meters. They had bike parking. These staples were everywhere. Good examples and bad examples. You can see in the middle, kind of in the bottom, there was like landscaping on the left and kind of a fence on the right. So snow has to go somewhere. So sometimes it ends up on top of your bike if there isn't space to put it. Protected bike lanes. I was on the search forum. These were the only examples I found in Helsinki. Like a vertical protected bike lane. So on the left is steel bollards on street bike lane, and on the right side photo, that's a parking protected bike lane. So that's what I saw in Helsinki. And last note on Helsinki, their bike share system. We didn't get to try it out because it's winter or it's summer only right now. 35 euros for the entire summer, and pretty great rates. They're trying to expand into the winter and trying to add e-bikes to their fleet as well. So that's a quick highlight of some of the stuff we saw in Helsinki. Then we went up north to Oulu, much further north. It is still in a body of water, so I don't think it's quite Fairbanks cold, but it's very cold. And they're much smaller than Helsinki. Generally, you can say they're like a 30% smaller than Anchorage, both in land area and population. These are scale images of each other. Here's another scale image. So their downtown core might be a little bit more dense, but they kind of get to suburbs and sprawl a little bit quicker. And again, back on weather, how much snow do they really get? How seriously can we take them? They do get plenty of snow, maybe a little bit less than Anchorage, but a little bit less than a normal Anchorage here, I'll say. And there was, you know, feet of snow when we were there. And they call themselves the cycling capital of Finland. They're very proud of their cycling. I stole this slide from their city bike engineer. This is what their bicycling superhighways look like up there in northern Finland. And here's back to that mode share chart I showed you. I highlighted Oulu here. That lighter orange is the bike mode share. So they're at 16%, more than double Helsinki. They are leading Finland in the bike mode share, and they're proud of it. But still plenty of people driving cars, so they still have a plan to expand that bicycling superhighway network. A little more details on what that looks like. When they go through and do it, 8 feet, that black asphalt is for pedestrians, and then 12 feet total for bikes, 2 6-foot lanes, 1 in each direction. That's what it looks like in the summer. And this is like in their kind of general core area. This is what that network looks like. They have 75 kilometers in their like big picture vision. 14 of it is built out already, and 16 kilometers in the next few years. I think it's worth pointing out in the bottom right, these aren't, you know, big mega projects. That middle bullet point, 2.7 kilometers of the Nalibana, That's just, you know, less than 2 miles of 20 feet of asphalt. That's like 2 car lanes. So these are small bites they're taking. They have everything planned out, but they're taking small bites every year to try and build out this bicycling superhighway network. This is what we heard from their city bike engineer, what their 3 main points: fast, easy, and comfortable. That's what they want for their network. But none of that, again, none of that really matters if it's not maintained well. So what they really say is their 3 key points are maintenance, maintenance, and maintenance. And maintenance, Olu seem to be very good at. Their kind of maintenance system, generally they have 10 areas. Their area contracts, 2 are done by public sector employees, 8 by private contractors. In these areas, they do everything. They do the road, they do sidewalks, pathways, it all belongs to them. But overlaid on top of those 10 areas, they have the bicycling superhighway maintenance contract. So across, you know, it ignores the administrative borders and it just does the bicycling superhighways. And they've been, you know, tweaking that contract over the years, and they're proud of where they have it. So they have these 11 key points they walked us through. From a high level, those 11 key points kind of, if I were to boil them down, I would say that you have to, in the contract, put what you want to see with tight standards, and then more importantly, have tight quality control on those things. And then secondly, dedicated contractors, facilities, and equipment. So, you know, there's one single contractor that does all those bonas. And within that contract, they have 6 drivers and 6 plows, but that's all they do. They do 20 kilometers and that's all they do all summer. One person. You know the guy that's plowing your path. And they believe that focus really helps like the quality and brings a sense of pride to it. This next slide helps kind of, I think it's a good picture of what the bicycling superhighways look like in the winter. We rode like 6-7 hours over the couple days we were there. It was -20 Fahrenheit, very cold. But we were just on kind of like regular bikes, narrow tires. We saw one fat bike the entire time we were there. People just ride what they ride in the summer because you don't really need to worry about it. It feels comfortable. We asked them about protected bike lanes, and they pulled up this picture on the bottom right that has the concrete barrier. It's on a bridge. And they said they struggle with a lot of the same things that you'd expect Anchorage to struggle with. Say, yeah, you know, we have it in some places where we have to, but you know, there's really not a great place to put the snow. And then they really struggle with the haul out procedures that you just can't do that great of a job of hauling it out. So they said what they like better is this other bridge on the left side of the screen here, where it's more separated and you have like many feet of space where that snow can pile up, and when the time comes, can be hauled out easily. So their best situation is top right, where you just build another bridge for the pedestrian. Easy enough, right? Just a new bridge. But that's what they shared with us. This is the last slide here. I stole it from the city bike engineer, Hari. I think points 1 and 3 kind of highlight the philosophy we heard from them. Number 1, winter maintenance is a customer service business. In that contract I mentioned, they literally get paid based on like public surveys. So if you're above whatever threshold, public rating, you get an incentive in your contract. And there's also penalties if it's really, really bad. And number 3, you know, we kept asking about, you know, funding and how much does this cost and your asphalt cost and blah, blah, blah. And I noticed over time, they kept calling it investments. It's not cost, it's an investment. They call everything investment. They believe, you know, this is what is in their city strategy and adopted plans, and it's what their constituents want. So that's how they view it. They view everything as investing to try and deliver the quality that is demanded of. Happy to answer questions. This slide deck is a lot smaller than it probably could be, but I don't want to eat up too much of your time. Yeah, if you guys get the chance to go to Finland, you should go in the winter.
Thanks, Zach. Good presentations.
Thank you.
Any questions for back in the committee? If you had to take one thing back that you'd like to see us implement in Anchorage, do you have one thing?
I feel like it's changed a couple times, but I think the big thing is we kind of view transportation and recreation a little bit differently. There's a PhD student there that part of her like intro to us is if you Google city and then like winter biking, it kind of shows you a lot. Here is an example of Olu where, you know, it's a dog and someone in a wheelchair. You Google for Anchorage, it's like tourists on like rented fat bikes. So I think tying in our amazing rec trail system into using it as a transportation facility is a big one. And how it's not just, you know, maybe cross-country skiers and folks walking their dog and how that can link together and add to the network of our on-street facility.
Anybody else have any questions, comments? Anybody from the public? Chelsea?
Chelsea, I was just gonna ask Brandon and Alex to answer your question.
Oh, yeah.
I have one thing to back what we, their answers to be.
Oh, Alex Reed, project manager from DOT. It's funny that they asked me this question while I was there and I had a great answer and I'm trying to remember what I said. I mean, it's good to see how other people are doing and what we can implement. There's restrictions with the right of way, but Helsinki and Hulu are two very different places from us and they're different from each other, but we can definitely take pieces and apply it. Particularly Helsinki, you know, the tech bike lanes aren't a great option there, but they did have raised tracks that are working throughout the city. That was good to see kind of more dense population, how it works. And then Olu, when there's room, the separated trail that doesn't conflict with traffic was great to see. And we can do that places here too. So it was kind of great to see implemented and how we can tie that into Anchorage's system as it is now.
So,
And I'm Brandon Telford with PME. And I think one thing that I took away is sort of this idea that we can make the life of our maintenance folks easier by designing infrastructure that provides them with space to deal with the snow. And that was the real takeaway from all the way. There's a sort of a contrast between a Helsinki approach of provide as much maintenance staff and support and equipment as possible to clear the snow as fast as possible. And then the Olu approach of provide space to store the snow so that maintenance can kind of get caught up over time. And so that sort of reinforced the importance, and we hear it locally from our maintenance folks, how much they value separation. So then to hear that reiterated in Finland was significant.
yeah, thanks, guys. Any other questions, comments from the public? Not seeing any. Zach, agenda item 6B, Fireweed Lane Rehab update.
Will be Alex Reed, DOT.
I'm Alex Reed from DOT. I am the project manager for the Fireweed Rehabilitation Project. The project limits go from Seward Highway to Spenard. So we're rehabilitating Fireweed for that whole section. Right now, that roadway is both a state and municipal roadway. At the completion of the project, the municipality will take over maintenance and operations of the whole roadway. We are partnered with municipality through the design of the project. I have a counterpart that's also a project manager helping with the design, Russ Oswald. And then we're also partnered with several consultants in the city, or really the country. Dal is assisting us with the public involvement. You know, Rachel here passing around the flyers. They're also assisting with traffic design. Kittleston's also partnered with us, assisting with doing traffic design for the pedestrian bicycle facilities. And leading the design is Lounsbury. Joe here is with me to go through with the design staff at the project, and then we'll answer any questions you guys have.
Okay. We're trying to pull that up, Rachel.
Yeah, so we're just pulling up the fact sheet for people joining remotely.
So my name is Joe Taylor. Thanks for having us today. I'm with Lounsbury Associates, as Alex said, and I'm the consulting project manager. And we're here today without a presentation, and that's on purpose. And so the project right now is just engaging and kind of just getting off the ground. And our very first formal action as a project team are to go out to the public. So we've been speaking at a number of community council meetings. I think we've had 4 presentations in the last month, the TAC, and we're here today. And the message that we're telling everybody is we've got to present because we haven't drawn a line. We're here to open up the lines of communication, introduce ourselves, get people oriented to the website, and just kind of talk about the limits and talk about some of the rules. And so the message that we've been delivering, I'm gonna give kind of the same speech that we've been telling the public, is this is a somewhat complicated project. As an AMATS funded project, it's a federal aid project. It's being led by DOT. The MOA is ultimately the owner. So there's a number of different rules in place here. And so it's a federal project. We've been talking about 2 laws that we have to follow. One, the National Environmental Policy Act. So you hear about NEPA quite a bit. That puts some sideboards on things that we must look at and talks about steps that we have to take. We're talking about the Uniform Relocation and Real Property Act, or the Uniform Act. That's a set of laws that govern the right-of-way rules. If we get in a situation where there's impacts to right-of-way, if that happens. So we have to have that in mind. But as an MOA-owned facility, ultimately, we're following the context-sensitive solution process, or the CSS process. So we'll be before planning and zoning, we'll be before UDC, we'll be following all those project delivery processes that we're all familiar with. So kind of 3 big processes or laws that we're following. I'm going to read our purpose statement, so I make sure I say the exact same words that we've been saying. This is what we're telling folks the purpose of the project is. The MOA and DOT are proposing to rehabilitate Fireweed land, that's from Spenard to Seward Highway, to improve safety and to bring the roadway and non-motorized facilities up to current design standards. The project team will analyze and design alternative roadway configurations to rehabilitate Fireweed Lane to improve motorized, active transportation, and business circulation and access. And so what we're telling folks, what we want the takeaway message behind that to be is simply 3 things that we have to keep in mind. We have to deal with traffic on the roadway and acknowledge that we have major signalized intersections, terminals, cross streets, 10,000 cars a day on the road. So we have to deal with that. But we also have 81 businesses. I think there's 81 businesses or private parcels on the corridor, and there's 3 schools on the corridor. So access and circulation are huge. That's a key thing that we have to deal with. And then finally, the active transportation community, the pedestrian bicycle community, almost don't have facilities at present on the roadway. So we're not meeting ADA standards with stuff that's out there in the world. We have utilities in the middle of our sidewalks. We don't have a lot of space. It's not serving everybody. So these are the 3 things that we're dealing with on the project. Some notes here. We got a couple of issues outside of those things and details that we're just telling folks to keep in mind. A 6 or 8 inch gas main on the road, an 8 inch water main on the road. We have ponding, we have buildings that are above the right of way. We have just heavy constraints that we have to deal with on the project as well. So we're talking about a family of alternatives that the project's considering. And so what we're saying is the next time we come before everybody, we will have lines drawn. And those lines are going to focus on 3 families of alternatives that we're working on. So we're going to consider a 4-lane section, a 3-lane section, and a 2-lane section. I'm going to explain those here kind of one by one. So in our 4-lane facility, because this is a federal project, and we're following the NEPA process, we have to consider a no build. And so from the perspective of this project, if this is nothing gets built, no build. We're going to look at that as a 4-lane, and we're going to ask ourselves, does doing nothing meet the purpose that I just described? We have to ask that question. As a rehabilitation project, we are also charged with looking at whether or not simply rehabilitating the existing facility, new pavement, new signs, new stripes, does that meet the purpose that I just described? So those are the 2 4-lanes that we're going to be looking at. In the 3-lane family, we actually have a number of them. So a 3-lane facility is the road diet technique that we've been talking about implementing in town, converting with 4 lanes right now, 2 in each direction, converting to 1 in each direction with a center left turn lane. That's called a road diet. This is a very strong candidate for that. In fact, the non-motorized plan, draws up a couple of concepts for that and makes some recommendations about that. So we're gonna look at a number of 3-lane facilities. Our source documents for that, we have 2 primary ones. We're gonna be pulling from the non-motorized plan, which has very detailed 3-lane sections in it. We're gonna pull from the Seward corridor plan, which has some 3-lane sections in it. These are gonna be where we're gonna start. The other place we're gonna look for our 3-lane is in the MOAs in the municipality's design criteria manual. So they have pictures and requirements for a 3-lane facility that come out of that. So these are our source documents that we're gonna start from. The first 3 lanes that you'll see will come from that. And then finally, we're gonna look at some 2-lane facilities where we take the 4-lane facility all the way down to 2. Our source documents for that are gonna be the Seward Road Corridor Plan, which talks about 2-lane conversions on the piece between, at the beginning of the project to Arctic. So from Seward to Arctic. We're gonna look at those on that segment, but we're gonna study and look at whether or not those are applicable all the way down the road. So those are gonna be the 2-lane sections that we look at. And then we're gonna look at a couple of combinations because Fireweed Lane has different utility as you move from west to east, right? So we're gonna look at some combinations of 2s and 3s, or maybe 3s and 4s. We're gonna consider, it might not be one monolithic cross section, I guess is the point I'm trying to make there. So our primary source documents, corridor plan, non-motorized plan, design criteria, manual. We're talking to folks about the schedule. And what we're saying is that a really fast set of bid-ready set of plans, as fast as we could get there. This doesn't mean funded for construction, but biddable would be 2028. And it's plausible, but everything has to go perfectly. We're telling folks to prepare more for 29 to 30 is probably more realistic. Our first public open house. So what we're doing right now is in data gathering and just introducing ourselves to folks. We have 2 more community council presentations next month. We're shooting for our first public open house about the middle of this summer. And at that point, we expect to show lines of the sections that I just described from the source documents we're pulling from. We're accepting comments and we're receiving lots of comments, high interest. Obviously, every community council presentation we get has a lot of interest. So we've been trying to address questions as best we can. And then the last thing I want to leave you with is the website is up. It went active within the last couple of weeks. It's fireweedlane.com. And we have links to the entire project team there, how you can get a hold of everybody. And then we've also linked our source documents that I'm talking about today. So you can pull those and if you're curious, you can go back and look through those. That's what we kind of worked on about. So that is our non-presentation presentation. And happy to take any comments that you have.
I actually want to add one more thing. We'll also be at the public transportation fair next week. That's next Thursday, 28th. It'll be at Alaska Airlines Center, 3 to 7 o'clock. Be there with the table and can answer any questions. We'll have a nice rollout. You can point out things if you want to as well.
Thanks. Sorry about that.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Got one. So the tip amendment to show them all in $50 million. Is that funded from AMATS allocation or is that?
Yeah, it'll be 100% funded from AMATS.
And it's quite a long stretch. What's the mileage on that full stretch from?
It's about 1.25.
1.25, so it's not as long as I thought. So no thoughts of phasing it or anything, build it all in one?
Not yet. So as of now, all the design is together. Depending on what the funding works for construction and when it's actually available, phasing may actually make sense if there is everything all at once. But we're not at the point where we've looked at splitting it up yet.
Sure. I wonder if this kind of picture, I wonder if there's any easier halves. If one half is easier to get to construction than the other half, but that's just not looking for an answer. So.
It'd be a function of the section, probably.
Sure.
Yeah. What we end up with the alternative would be the way you'd be able to answer that the best. There's driveway issues throughout the whole corridor. There's drainage issues throughout the whole corridor. There's utility issues throughout the corridor. Again, that's another one we could answer later on the design for a lot better.
Thanks. Any comments, questions from the public? Not seeing any. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Further project or plan updates here?
Nothing from us. Thank you.
To item number 7, which is committee comment. Any comments from the committee? have one. And it's short, I promise. I just wanted to mention, because it's very pertinent to AMATS, I think that we just hired a new regional traffic engineer over at DOT. She started this week, Anna Boson. She's not a stranger to AMATS. I think she had more comments than anybody else on the MTP, so you may recognize that name. But she's long-term DOT employee, registered engineer, traffic background. And, we've had that position vacant for probably 10 months. And she's replacing, highly respected guy that was there for 20 years, brilliant guy. A real good resource, but this is good. I think we're at a point of evolution. That might be overstating it a little bit in our traffic engineering, but it's going to bring, she's a resident of Anchorage. She's going to bring kind of a fresh perspective, and it's going to look a little bit different. I'm looking forward to seeing what she does with that position. Are there any comments from the public? Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Aves Thompson. As you work through these safety programs and the Seward to Glen project, I can't overemphasize the fact that you must take into consideration commercial vehicles. Commercial vehicles are an integral part of our economy, of our way of life. They deliver the goods from the port to stores in South Anchorage, stores in Fairview, stores in Muldoon. And there must be a safe and efficient way for them to deliver the goods. So please keep that in mind. Thank you.
Appreciate that. I agree with you 100%. Any other comments from the public? Okay. No, I'm not seeing it. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Great. Everybody will see you in a month.
Thank you.